Hello, hello. Welcome back to our channel. I'm Kelly Lynn Colby, editorial director at Cursed Dragon Ship Publishing. And tonight we have a very special cover reveal with author Gregory D. Little and book 4 in the Mutagen Deception series, The Body Heist. Are you ready to show everyone who's on the cover?
Let's do it.
All right. So let us reveal the cover. Oh, I love it. So who is on the cover this time, Greg?
This is series stalwart Carl, who's been in one of the main characters since the first book, but he's never had a cover of his own. So this time we decided we had to rectify that because
We love
Carl's
it.
great. We love Carl.
He is. He is a perennial favorite amongst the fans. I don't know what that says about his fate. You're going to have to read the book to find out. But we love Carl. So it's so nice to actually see what he looks like now. I say he's quite the distinguished gentleman.
Yes, yeah. He's one I've always had a very solid mental conception of since the beginning. So,
I love
um,
it. Well, before I ask you more about what's going on in this one, I'm going to go ahead and read the book description on the back. On the harsh world of Anaran Hondo, alien refugees and abandoned humans fight for their right to exist. But are they choosing this battle, or merely the puppets of mysterious forces with dark agendas? Carl wants nothing more than to settle down with Stephanie and help her raise her daughter, Ella. But their family isn't whole. Stephanie's adopted daughter, Mari, a girl Carl also cares deeply for, is missing. Carl volunteers to go undercover in enemy territory to find her. Meanwhile, Stephanie teams up with uneasy ally Yaz Delgassi and her band of resistance fighters to establish a stable foothold for their people. When a targeted attack goes horribly wrong, Mari pops up in a pirate broadcast calling out the resistance. Sporting a new name and looking years older than she should, Mari's sudden reappearance sets off a planet-wide race to discover where she is and what she plans next. Her family is desperate to find her. Anaran Hondo's shattered government is even more determined to remove her from the board. Mari, however, only answers to a strange, godlike entity. Yet, despite the fact she always seems one step ahead of her pursuers, even she is unaware of the big picture. As each group distracts themselves with infighting and rebellion, they're ignoring the only question that matters: who or what is manipulating all these factions and why? I feel like we need that dun 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 music at the end of that. Yeah, I think it's only appropriate. So very fun, very exciting, all kinds of things going on. As you see, lots of characters still in the picture, kicking around. We have a few surprises that enter this one as well. And we are still at the end of book 3. We were still on the planet Anaran Hondo, and we are still there now. For a quick recap, tell us a little bit again about that planet.
It is a tidally locked planet, so meaning that the same side always faces the star. So one side is very hot, the other side is very cold. There's no livable surface to speak of. It's barren, windswept, scalding, freezing alternately. So everyone lives underground. There's a narrow band in the middle where the permanent day and permanent night meet, where the temperatures are the closest thing to livable, and that's where all the wealthy people live, essentially. The three meridian cities in a sort of rift valley that spans almost the whole vertical or um, spans sort of almost
Circumference?
the entire, yeah, well, like half the circumference of the planet, we'll call it. But everyone else lives underground to varying degrees. And it's a planet where even to live in those conditions, the human natives have modified themselves cybernetically to be able to tolerate the extremes. And then the the refugees, we'll call them, from earlier in the series, have arrived here and are trying their best. The ones who are still free to do so, uh, to uh, to carve themselves out a place to live here because they have nowhere else to go, essentially.
Yep, this is it. Stuff happened to their first planet. If you want to know what it is, you got to go read book 1 and 2.
Yes.
So, Very exciting. I like that. That was a very good refresher and excitement in this. I say this book, whenever we're talking about it, this series is a beautiful mix of science fiction and concepts, general concepts with science fiction, as in invasion and environmental damage and all of these kind of things. And autonomy seems to be a very big sci-fi theme, which definitely applies to this as well. And you also have all these horror elements, like you have crazy monsters in there, as you can see on the cover. We've got a few instances up there. When Stephanie asked about the cover, she's the cover designer. Stephanie Saw, she does amazing work. And are there any new monsters in this one? And I was like, well, kinda. But they don't need to go on the cover this time. So
Yeah, maybe next time.
maybe next time. Yeah,
Once they've been revealed, they can show up in the fifth cover, maybe.
exactly, exactly, exactly. Um, so yeah, it was really okay. Sorry, I had to refresh something. I do want you to know that Northern Lights is very unhappy if you're going to kill off Carl. He says, "Oh no, if Greg kills him off, she's got."
Well, we'll just have to see what happens. I make no
You're just
promises
gonna have
about
to
any
read it.
character's fate. You know, for all anyone knows, I don't know whether they live or die in the series. So,
Yeah, Greg. For those who don't know, he is and um, they don't call it pantser anymore. What do they call your style of writing, Greg? I can't remember.
oh, is there a new term?
Yeah, there is. There's a new term. I know we're getting old. Literally, I just had a birthday last week. I can't remember it, but pantser is what we used to call it. So Greg sits down and just writes. What is that process like for you?
I mean, it's not quite that um, unformed. I generally have an idea when I sit down to write a book, where I want that book to end and where it's starting from. And so I know the beginning and the ending. If I don't know those two things, it's hard to do anything. I do need to know what I'm working toward. And then I'll kind of just start writing interesting scenes that would fall in between those 2 points. And generally, I'll write an interesting scene, and that will lead me to write something else, and that will lead me to write something else. And I'll kind of bounce around chronologically between beginning and ending with whatever interests me at the time. And then at a certain point, I've sort of just decide I've reached kind of a critical mass, and I start at the beginning of, the starting scene, and I just work through kind of chronologically with everything I've got, and I start filling in gaps. And generally, what happens is some of the stuff I've written, especially if it was early on in the drafting process, will become obsolete by that point. Something other stuff will have taken over, so all that stuff gets chucked. And then through that process, I end up with a completed kind of first draft, which I then clean up and send to you, and then you tell me. And at that point, I'm kind of mush brained about the whole thing. I need a second set of eyes, and that's when you tell me all the issues with it, and you're very good at identifying what is missing, what is needed. And then I go rearrange everything and add some stuff and subtract some stuff, and you're always very happy with the second draft.
Always. That's like the first time I get it, and I'm like, this is great. Now rewrite it. The
Yes.
second, I swear that's what I say every time. This is great. Rewrite it. And then, but the second time, I'm like, there you go. That's it. You did it. Thanks, man. So it's incredible. It's a very unique discovery writer. That's what it's called.
Okay, yeah, that term I had heard. I wasn't aware that it taken. So I'm kind of in between the two. I don't purely discovery write. I've tried doing that and it doesn't work for me. I do need to have an end point in mind, or I can't. Because and it sort of makes sense when you have as many twists and turns as my books tend to have. You need to know what you're building toward, the big reveal you're building toward, the big
Mhm.
ending surprise you're building toward, or else nothing makes sense. Um,
Right.
because you have to lay the groundwork for that all through the earlier part of the story. So if you don't know what you're building toward, it's kind of, wasted effort, I think, for me. Obviously, there's people who can do that, and I applaud them. At this point, I think this is book number 9. I I've given up trying to force my process into doing something else. I know the process works for me, so that's what I go with.
It's called maturity in writing, right? You figured it out. This is just the way it is.
Hmm.
So no, I love it. I love it. Plus, I have to say the people I know that just Discovery write, like only Discovery write, their endings suck, and your endings are amazing. So I'm glad you do it that way.
I do think that's a potential risk. I'm not saying no one can do it, but I do think it's a
Right.
high risk area for discovery writing, is because if you don't have that ending in mind, if you're purely letting the story sort of branch off organically on its own, it is a risk that you'll wind up with an ending that is not maybe as resonant as it should be with the rest of the story.
I agree 100%. So on our cover reveals, we tend to give the audience a sample of the book itself. Do you have a sample ready for us?
Yes, this is a scene early in the book with a character that has was introduced in book three, so she's relatively new, but she's back for book four. So we'll go here. The door to Caroline Duvernay's penthouse suite chimed with gentle insistence. Her lone guest for the evening's festivities was here. "I'll get it," Caroline called out to her assistant. The words felt odd coming out of her mouth, but the woman had other, more important tasking. Caroline had sent her other staff away for the evening. It would normally have appeared odd for the most powerful Equatorian left on the planet to go without staff for a dinner of peers, but circumstances demanded it. Besides, she'd decided this last one required the personal touch. She opened the door to a panicked Barbara Strickland. "This feels like the last safe place on the planet," the woman said, eyes wide. "Then come in, dear, come in." Caroline beckoned with urgency, though her liquid French accent did not convey the emotion well. Yeah, I'm going to pause here. She has a French accent, but I'm not going to attempt that. It's only safe if the doors are closed. The woman started forward, then paused, looking suddenly guarded. "The others said I shouldn't trust you." But before Caroline could call up one of her practiced responses, Strickland shrugged. "But see where that logic got them. They're all dead." Caroline smiled as the woman swept inside, but only when her back was turned. That was very nearly the same argument she'd been about to make as a joke. There was a reason she'd left Barbara Strickland for last. "I wasn't sure if you'd accept my invitation, but I'd hoped you'd come," Caroline said, gesturing her guest to the table. The food was already laid out. "So I've made it up for two, and just so you don't have to worry I'm trying to poison you or some such nonsense, you get to pick the setting." She smiled to indicate she was joking, hoping Strickland wasn't twitchy enough that Caroline had overstepped. Strickland went with left. It was just as well Caroline wasn't trying to poison the woman. She'd have guessed right, and that would have put her poison resistances to the test. I was being followed the whole way over." Strickland took a hefty swallow from the glass of wine awaiting her. "I dismissed the last of my staff this morning. I just couldn't trust anyone, not after what I heard happened to you." "It was a very near thing," Caroline agreed, without going into detail. She couldn't be sure which of the many rumors she'd started the woman had heard. "I just can't see how they could have infiltrated our ranks this far," Strickland said. "They're alien monsters. How could they be this good at pretending to be human?" "Alien mimics," Caroline corrected gently. "And near as we can tell from studying the prisoners, they've been doing it for a long time. So long, in fact, that they managed to convince even themselves they were human." Strickland almost coughed out her second mouthful of wine. Caroline had to hide her grinding teeth behind her smile. That was a very good bottle she was wasting on this idiot. The least the woman could do was appreciate it. "So it's true?" Strickland asked. "They really have no idea they aren't human." "Hard as it is to believe, that seems to be the case. For most of them, anyway. Safe to say those forming this resistance have a better idea what's going on. And they know their business when it comes to infiltration, clearly," she added, gesturing as if to encompass the entire world in her statement. "But come, eat your meal. This is real steak, and I don't know how much longer we'll be able to keep the other two cows alive, now that our dear friends aboard the Ultima Thule made off with all our embryos." Strickland made a tut of displeasure at the mention of their peers, the ones who had abandoned them to slowly desiccate on this world. "Don't worry, dear. They'll get theirs soon enough. It seemed a kindness to give Barbara this much at least. Now eat." Caroline suited her own words, digging in with more gusto than decorum called for. She didn't care. The only other person on this rock who had the status to judge Caroline was wolfing her steak down even faster, pausing only to make little sounds of pleasure. The steak knives Caroline had set out scarcely seemed necessary, the printed meat was so tender. How did you make this without staff? Strickland sounded half impressed and half scandalized. I know my way around a kitchen, Caroline said. She allowed a little wistfulness to enter her voice. My mother, she enjoyed making food, enjoyed making her family smile. Besides, I wasn't totally without help. On cue, a noise emerged from the bedroom to her right and Barbara's left. The woman's head snapped in that direction at once, totally focused, her meal forgotten mid-bite. My, but she is twitchy. Caroline tightened her grip around the handle of her knife and rose from her seat, heart pounding. I thought you said, oh! Barbara clutched a hand to her throat, red wetness already sliding between her fingers to cascade down. Caroline had never slashed someone's throat before, much less from across a table, but from the look of it, she'd gotten the job done. It didn't feel like she'd imagined it would feel. She'd expected a rush of power. Instead, she felt jittery, full of jangled nerves firing at random. She'd wanted to do this last one with her own hands. Maybe that had been a mistake. I tr I trust. Barbara could scarcely get the words out around the waterfall of blood flooding her throat. I'm sorry, dear, Caroline said, having trouble with her own words as she watched the life drain out of the woman. She kept wanting to laugh uncontrollably. The others were right when they said not to trust me. It just didn't do them any good in the Barbara Strickland thumped onto the table with a final gurgling wheeze and lay still. End. Caroline finished to no one. Her aide emerged from the bedroom, garish burgundy scales glinting in the dining room's mood lighting. Her large dark eyes took in the body dispassionately. I take it my distraction worked then, ma'am. Perfect as ever, Caroline said, wiping the steak knife clean on a napkin specifically selected to hide blood. Now, if you could see about cleaning this up, it seems we're finally done with our little side project. Certainly. And have the rest of her wine, Caroline said. As a matter of fact, have the rest of the bottle. None of this would have been possible if it wasn't for you. You're too kind, ma'am. Caroline didn't think so. She could still see the moment all those months ago in her mind's eye, the line of applicants for the position of aide to the most powerful woman in the newly consolidating colonial government. And hidden amongst them, disguised under false scales and a shaved head, was Bodhi Dwivendi, one of the few remaining Equatorians. He'd smuggled himself into the interview process, intent on killing Caroline and, well, she still wasn't entirely certain. Taking her place? Taking what wealth she had remaining to her? Taking of some sort, certainly. But he'd never gotten the chance, for even as he'd stood up, gun held level at Caroline's heart as she emerged to call in the next applicant, another had stood up behind him, a woman with scales in that horrid new style of choosing flamboyant colors over austere black. Caroline had spotted her earlier, resolved to dismiss her outright for her gauche taste, and instead had watched her, face nearly as terrified as Caroline's must have been, hurling herself at Dwivendi and tackling him to the ground. His shot had gone wide, but in the ensuing scuffle the next one hadn't. It had blown his head wide open from the underside of his jaw. Caroline had dismissed every applicant but one. To the woman who had saved her went the job. You're too modest, Gianna, Caroline said, but don't change. I like that about you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go prepare for my daily address.
So those of you who are fans, did you notice? Did you notice the name? It's awesome. Plus, during the violence, Florida Kevin was like, "Whoopsie." If anyone's gonna tolerate the violence, it's Florida Kevin. He's like, "Oh yeah, I get it." Yep, Gianna. I mean, we sort of wake up at the end of book 3, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we get to see what she's up to in this one. It's so exciting. I really, really like what you did with her character. So that was really fun.
She
Um,
is a really fun character and one I had not even envisioned prior to starting to work on book 2. So she was a new character that I had not planned on, who then kind of took on a life of her own and wound up being very important for several books.
yeah, she's bridging a lot of gaps. So I can see why she was important, right? Like it
Yeah.
kind of makes sense what's happening. I will say, as we read on the back cover copy, we got hints of another being that might be, or a group of beings who might be manipulating these people. Are we going to get to meet this being in book 5?
Um, yes, not, well, yes, yes, you will.
Because I'm excited.
No,
I'm like, hi.
yeah, yes. Not in the sense of they'll be like, walking up and shaking hands with people, but yes, they will be they will be in the story in a direct fashion. Yes.
Good, good, good. I'm very excited. See, here's the thing, when you edit for a living, a lot of times you can still very much enjoy books, even though you know exactly where they're going, right? I never know where yours are going. So that is a true talent, and I love it. Um, so
Thank
for
you.
these books, anyone who is a fan of sci-fi and horror mixes, this is great. Sci-fi horror is an upcoming um, genre. So we are right on the cutting edge, Greg. Nicely
Yeah,
done.
I feel like it's having a moment, like a little bit of a
Hmm.
moment right now.
Yep,
Because I see more and more of them, which makes me happy because I enjoy obviously the genre a lot. I think there's a lot of horror latent in some aspects of science fiction or science or the universe or there's a lot of existential horror, I guess, is out
for
there.
sure.
I'm reading a book right now um, called Shroud by Adrian Tchaikovsky, who's one of my favorites, and that's got some definite sci-fi horror vibes to it, and the world he has concocted is just thinking about being there is it's truly upsetting on an existential level, put it that way. Uh,
Yeah, Tchaikovsky's on my list, so I need to
yeah.
get to him. And the who's the other one? Christopher Riochio, The Empire of Silence. That one's
Oh, okay.
very
Yeah.
popular right now too. That first book's almost 800 pages though, so you're welcome, all you readers out there. We keep our books at like a reasonable, round 350. So
Yeah, well, the first book of this series, when Kelly returned the draft back to me, she said, "This is great. I need you to cut it by a third." So, uh,
sorry.
no, no, it was
And it's
it's a
even
better,
better.
it's a much better book now. And you're like, we said, I need you to cut it by a third. Can you do that? And I
Mhm.
had no idea, but I was like, uh-huh.
Totally gonna do it. I'm gonna figure it out.
Because if an editor asks, "Can you do this?" you answer yes. And you worry
Jen's like,
about
wait,
figure.
wait, you only want two-thirds of a book? No, Jen, I want the whole book. Only two-thirds is long. Come on now.
The first draft of what would become The Last Humans was like 125,000 words long. So
Yeah.
and you wanted it at like 80. So yeah.
Yeah, I need it lower. I need it lower. I think it ends up at like 92 or something, which is great. It's great. It's perfection. So awesome, awesome. This book, the Body Heist, releases on April 22nd. So hopefully we will see you here for that release. Books 1, 2, and 3 are available right now. They are available wherever you get your books. You can even go to your favorite small indie bookstore and order it from them, and you can get it. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read the ebook for free on Kindle Unlimited.
Yeah.
And where can
What is
fans
this?
find you if they're looking for you?
My website is gregorydlittle.com. It is somewhat in decent shape. Parts of it are. Ignore the other parts. I'm on Facebook under I think it's well, hold on. I've got it up here. What is it? Gregory D. Little Author on Facebook is my and then on Instagram, I believe just to be difficult as author Gregory D. Little on Instagram.
I think it is because I
We-
just tagged you today. I'm pretty sure it's what it is. Northern
yes.
Lights is, written me like in 4 different lines, lots of them. Jen Bear
Yeah,
goes, I think Northern wants one.
I'm not sure if I'm totally clear on that, but we can clarify that after. We will get you a copy. That's,
We already have your info, man. We just sent it right over.
yeah.
So that's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. Do you have any last words?
I can't believe we're 4 books into this series already. It's kind of crazy. Every so often I think back to writing the first draft of the first book way back, like at this point, almost 15 years ago is when I wrote the first draft of this book. Because it sat on my shelf sat on my shelf for a long time before I dusted it off and started sending it out again after the first kind of wave of attempts. And it's sort of wild to think that now here we are and we're 4 books in and I'm working on the last one. So
It's
it's just
pretty,
sort of crazy.
pretty darn impressive.
Um,
Yeah, Jen Bear says last word sounds ominous. Apropos.
Yeah, yes, yes.
It totally fits. Florida
Well,
Kevin
it's
says
like it's
it's a
like
great cover. Sorry, go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say it's like the joke I see. There's the difference. The choice of words is important. There's a difference between saying "Have a great day" and "Enjoy the next 24 hours."
Yeah,
Gives a
that's right.
totally different vibe.
It doesn't. There's like a whole bunch of those. I was like, wow, it really does work. You're right.
Or
Yeah,
there's
Florida
the
Kevin
yeah
says it's a great cover, and he's positive it's an equally fantastic book if past efforts are anything to judge by. And Nicole says, congratulations, Greg. So awesome,
thank you.
awesome, awesome. So you are amazing. Thank you so much for
Oh,
being here.
thanks.
And I can't wait to hold this book in my hands either. See, after all this stuff we're doing and we don't get to hold it, and it's so cool to actually hold it. So we'll get there.
Yes, yeah. I get to put it up on my little shelf of my books. That
That's right. The
it
trophies.
gets a little bit bigger every year,
That's
which
right.
is
That's the
fun.
plan. So excellent, excellent. All right. Thank you, everyone. And bye, everyone.